Before we begin this Sunday address, if you are not already subscribed, go ahead and do so now. And if you are subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't decided to unsubscribe you. It seems on a weekly basis, we get dozens of people who say that they mysteriously found themselves unsubscribed and it wasn't their action. Also, be sure to give the video a like. The white supremacists hate that. Now, that said, by now, I'm sure that most of you are familiar with the tragedy of Breonna Taylor, a young 26-year-old EMT for Louisville, Kentucky, who was murdered in her own home by a gang of white supremacist thugs who had badges. Basically, the local kill squad, and I mean that literally. These guys have a long track record, the individuals who took her life, a long track record of police brutality, excessive force, and violent confrontations that they initiated with the public. But that's not the way that the white media is trying to frame this story. Even in a case where a young woman was murdered in her own home, the white media is trying to figure out how to make her the person who's the bad guy. And the main individual who they're trying to paint as the villain of the piece is her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, who, seeing the woman he loved gunned down in cold blood, decided that he would try to defend himself and to defend her to the best of his ability. Kenneth Walker is who the white media is attempting to accuse of a crime. Even if he did what they allege, there was no crime committed. He took action to protect the woman he cared about. White power hates seeing that, and they have been demonizing him and demonizing her posthumously every way that they could, trying to make it where there's some sort of justification for it. Yeah, she's dead, but truth be told, they're not really good people. They don't want that to be the narrative that a black man's defending a black woman, that a black woman is killed and a black man takes up arms to fight back against her killers. The white media hates that. The thugs with badges hate it, and the dominant society hates it. So they are all working together to smear the murder victim, and they're desperately grasping at straws to cast aspersions on Kenneth Walker. Problem is they don't have anything to work with. This is just like the murders of Philandro Castile and Jordan Russell Davis. When you have a victim who you don't have anything to point to, you can't say that, well, he had a brush with the law or there was some sort of complaint against him. When you don't have anything legal that you can point to, well, what you say instead is, well, there was someone in the area looked like him. And well, there were rumors that the white media does that. They know that their job is to repeat and to bolster and prop up all of the unqualified, uncalled for killings by the enforcement arm of white supremacy. The police are already changing their story because they know that they're wrong, they know they got caught, and they know this isn't going away. They had a no-knock warrant when they intentionally and without provocation opened a hail of gunfire on Breonna Taylor's residence and murdered her in cold blood. There was no justification for what they did. No one had fired on them. It's not as if they were encountering any sort of resistance as they tried to smash their way into Breonna Taylor's home. No one had fired on them. They staged an ambush no different than what the Chicago PD did to Fred Hampton. And this is not the first time that the Louisville Police have pulled an ambush like this. Well, this time things didn't go their way. The police falsely claimed that they carried out their murderous attack because this was a drug house. And there was a known big-time dope dealer who lived there. And the standard lie that they use. Well, after they murdered Breonna Taylor, and after Kenneth Walker put up righteous resistance, wounding one of the race soldiers in his own self-defense, one of these guys who had murdered Breonna Taylor and was now trying to murder Kenneth Walker defended himself, and the cops were like, this nigger, he's out of control. Okay, so since this was apparently the Pablo Escobar of Louisville, Kentucky's house that they were shooting their way into, since they had a no-knock warrant because this place was clearly a fortified drug den, what did the cops find? They searched the place and they found nothing. No drugs at all. That should be the headline for every story involving the murder of Breonna Taylor. No drugs found in the house. The white media buries that in their stories. They do not start off with, the police claim that they were raiding a drug house, but there were no drugs found. Instead, they usually bury it in the story if they mention it at all. A lot of the white media stories, most of them, in fact, don't even mention, hey, the cops were claiming they were raiding a drug house. There were no drugs found, so the white media just doesn't mention that. And of course, this is meant to do one of two things. Either A, it is meant to lend credence to the idea that, well, they must have found drugs, otherwise the white media would have mentioned there were no drugs. Or it's meant to at least give a talking point to the white supremacist hangers-on and shills out there to say, well, there was a drug house and they must have found something. That's the whole point. They leave a void there. And speaking of deliberate voids that the white media fills with garbage, they start all their stories, their coverage has been, well, what do we know about Kenneth Walker? What do we know about Breonna Taylor? They don't have it as a story of what do we know about the police who killed Breonna Taylor. This is all about, well, we're going to make the victims into the subject here. We're not talking about the police. We're talking about these niggers here. We're talking about them. They're the ones we need to be looking at. They're the victims. But this is the white media's narrative. If a black person is accused of committing a crime, well, it's all about them. We're not going to be talking about the circumstances. We're not going to be talking about the accuser. It's all about them. And if a black person is murdered, same template, the exact same scheme. We're talking all about that nigger here, that you must have done something. They know that they can give a slant to the coverage that is meant to fit the profile of, in the public mind, it's meant to imply this is the person who committed a crime. They did something wrong. Breonna Taylor wasn't even the person that these white thugs with badges were trying to kill. She wasn't even the one that they allegedly were raiding the house for. And neither was Kenneth Walker. Who the police claimed that they were looking for was some third individual who, thanks to the family of Breonna Taylor's lawsuit, we know the person who they were claiming that they were supposed to be looking for, hunting down so he could kill him. This was a guy who lived like 10 miles away from Breonna Taylor. This wasn't even somebody who lived there. But the cops were saying, well, we needed to raid the place because, well, we thought that he had been there at least a couple of times. We thought that he had been there, so we had to shoot the place up. We didn't have a choice but to shoot the place up because we didn't know if the guy was there. See, this is what counts as law enforcement under white supremacy. This is not a police department. This happens to be a kill squad. This happens to be a local death squad. And you have a bunch of white supremacist thugs in the DA's offices and on the bench who are allowing them to operate, and they've been getting away with it for a while, but now they went one kill too far. And the white media realizing, yeah, the tide's turned. We've seen the Jason Van Dykes go up the river, and the Amber Geigers go up the river, and the Michael Slagers. Oh, hell. Well, we can't tell the public anymore that, well, it's so hard to convict the police. So we're just going to, since we can't do that, we're just going to hold the line and say our usual garbage. Yeah, it won't help, but we're not changing our tune. That's what the white media has been reduced to. Trying to focus on the victims. We're not mentioning their killers. We're not talking about them. We're trying to make it where you don't have any names or any people to look at because we don't want them to be the focus of the public's ire. We're going to talk about Breonna Taylor, and we're also going to be trying to cast aspersions. We're going to be talking about what the police say. We're not going to be talking about the killers of Breonna Taylor and who the would-be killers of Kenneth Walker. We're not going to be talking about them. We're not giving you any information on them. Instead, it's going to be all about, well, she was killed, but here's what the police said. The police had a good reason for it. That's what this is meant to mislead the public mind too. Yeah, they murdered her in cold blood. There were no drugs found. She has no criminal record, no association with any drug dealers or criminals. But you know what? The cops had a good reason for it, though. It was an honest mistake. Sure, it was basically the next best thing to a justified shooting. Why? It was an honest mistake. Neither Breonna Taylor nor Kenneth Walker have any criminal records. The white media looked for them. They were desperately looking for them. It's like, we got to get something on these guys. We got to dirty them up. Neither of them has any sort of drug conviction. No drug charges, no anything. The white media was looking furiously for that. We got to find something. We got to get something on us so we can dirty them up. See, the white media was using all of their resources to look for any dirt that they could find on Breonna Taylor, and she's the one who was murdered. She's the murder victim here. Kenneth Walker had to fight for his life and do everything that he could to defend the woman who he loved, who was on the ground dead. And the white media is looking at him and go, well, we got to get something on him. We got to find a way to dirty him up. Meanwhile, they're not saying anything about the three white supremacist thugs who took Breonna Taylor's life. The white media has all of these investigative resources at their disposal, but for some reason they can't do any investigations of white supremacist thugs with badges who murder black people. All of a sudden they can't ask any questions, can't get any personnel records, can't look at anything, can't ask anything. Well, thanks to Breonna Taylor's family's lawsuit, here's what we have found out about at least two of these white supremacist thugs. Miles Cosgrove was previously sued for excessive force by a man who he shot in 2006. Truth be told, a man he was trying to kill. So we know this is a guy who's trigger happy. And another one of the thugs, Brett Hankinson, he has a prior history of unnecessary force and corruption within his own police department. And he's been involved in dozens of situations where he's sent citizens to the hospital for injuries ranging from being tased to pepper sprayed and struck repeatedly in the face and the eyes. This is the level of individual who the Louisville PD likes to have on the payroll. They like to have these brutes on the payroll because that's the entire point. You can't have a very effective death squad if they're squeamish about inflicting unnecessary bodily harm. The Louisville PD knows exactly who these scumbags are and exactly what they've been doing, because this is what they were hired to do. This is what they're there to do. They are there to carry out unrestrained, uncalled for excessive brutality and death. That's what they were hired for. That was their entire purpose, and they serve no other purpose. But the white media is not telling you that. They want to leave a void there, and they fill that void with all sorts of police PR lies and spin and misdirection and disinformation. Oh, here's the latest department lie about what they did. And when the department's not lying, they're saying, well, it's an ongoing investigation and there's no comment. Yeah, you see, if they had had a situation where a black man was accused of shooting the cops and the cops thought that they had something they could work with to get some quickie sympathy with the public, they would be releasing everything. Wouldn't be no lies about, well, there's an ongoing investigation we can't talk about. They'd be saying, here's exactly what happened, names, dates, places. Oh, and this guy had drug convictions. He was a lifelong crook, and police risk their lives every day to kill these niggers. I mean, to protect the public. And every day we get up thinking about nothing more than killing as many niggers as possible. I mean, to protect the public from all sorts of dangers, and this is what we face every day, and blue lives matter. Blue lives matter. That's the script. They are so predictable about it because they've done it so many times. You know exactly what the truth is because they've lied so many times. The thugs in blue have absolutely no problem whatsoever giving all sorts of comments and information about investigations while they're going on. Hell, while the body's cold on the ground, they got no problem with that when it suits them. But on the other hand, when it doesn't suit them, ongoing investigation, we can't comment. We release body camera footage because we want to be transparent with the public. Hey, here's some footage of a cop shooting a black person 10 times, one time in the back 14 times, 9 times when the person's on the ground. Well, ongoing investigation, we can't comment, can't release any body camera footage. Yeah, whatever happened to transparency? And the white media has been trying to be the PR wing for the thugs in blue, trying to dig up or invent some sort of justification, something, if they can just find something in the past of Breonna Taylor or Kenneth Walker, something you can use to give rhetorical cover and to let the white supremacist shills online and other places say, well, these niggers, they deserved it. They don't have that to work with. So the white media is saying, well, there must be something. Were these really good people, Hey, has anyone ever said anything critical of them? You had a case of one of these white Hispanics who called herself going on some website and writing some smear piece about Breonna Taylor because they didn't actually have any crimes they could point to. They didn't have anything legal that they could point to. So now it's a matter of, well, if we can find anyone who's ever said anything critical about them, we'll go ahead and run with that. We'll run with that if we can. We just need something that we can use, some sort of verbiage that we can use, something, just something to give cover to, something we can use. We've got to push the narrative that this black person deserved to die, that this wasn't a good person. We have to hammer that narrative. They've been just grasping at straws, desperate, more and more pathetically reaching for something, realizing that there's nothing there, but this is all they can do. This is what happens when you got these die-hard white supremacists and their non-white allies who are working hand in hand with them. This is what you get. You've had politicians give their phony expressions of sympathy and support for the family. You had the governor of Kentucky who's pretending as if he's concerned. You had the mayor of Louisville pretending to be concerned. All of them saying the same thing. None of them pointing out, hey, this is one of the city's employees. This is an EMT. A woman with a squeaky clean record. A young woman shot down in her prime. No drugs found in the house. The police are out of control. Nobody's looking and going, hey, this police department's got big problems and they need to be taken to the woodshed. Heads need to roll on this one. People need to go to prison. This department needs to be run through with Lysol and with criminal indictments because they're so freaking filthy. Nobody's saying that. Instead, it's the same old, well, this is very serious and the public wants answers. Yeah, you see, whenever you have young black people fighting for their freedom in Baltimore, Barack Obama is saying they're thugs and they need to be indicted and there need to be prosecutions. But whenever you're dealing with white supremacists, especially white supremacists who enact violence against white people, nobody's calling for prosecutions. Nobody's calling for indictments. Nobody's saying people need to go to prison. Crimes have been committed here. Nobody says it's a crime. Instead, it's, there should be an inquiry. We should have an inquiry. We should look into this. That's what the word investigation means. If it's a black person, nobody says investigations. They say prosecutions. Charges should be brought. Whenever you're dealing with non-black people, especially white supremacists, it's investigations, which is just another word for let's pretend to look into it. We'll look into it. We'll investigate, but we ain't charging anybody. This is the kind of discussion the white media doesn't want to take place. White media is trying to figure out, can we gin up some support for the police? Can we get some phony baloney pretend actor Blue Lives Matter activists to get out there and toe the line and say that the police, they do a dangerous job every day. Why, it's hard work killing these unarmed niggers. Protecting the public. They're trying to figure out if they can get something going, and it ain't happening. It's not working this time. Oh, there's plenty of protests against the thugs in blue, but there's nobody supporting them. They understand, yeah, we stand at a tipping point. With this case in particular, we'll get to the tipping point that Kenneth Walker represents, because I've been telling you about the need for a black legal defense fund and how we can turn the tide on this whole thing. With this case, we stand at a potential tipping point. The white media certainly seems to recognize that we stand at a fork in the road, that this is an important incident that could be precedent setting. Same way that the murder of Trayvon Martin was, where we now stand at another tipping point, only this one goes in the favor of black people. White media knows that. The thugs in blue know that. Now, since everybody realizes that the enforcement arm of white supremacists are inveterate liars, and that only a willing fool, puts any stock in what they say, the first thing that the white media ought to be asking is, hey, will the police release the body camera footage of this murderous attack that they carried out? Where's the body camera footage at? That would solve everything. We could go ahead and hear and see what was going on. Why, if the police are on the level with it, if the police are telling the truth, why, they ought to be eager to release the body camera footage. Every single one of the white supremacist death squad troopers who were there ought to have their body cameras on, and the police ought to be releasing that and say, why, you can see 10 different versions of our story. Why, we call it exactly the way that it happened. Because that's what they do in literally the handful of cases. How many times have you seen the police release body camera footage of some killing they carry out? You can literally count the times on one hand and have enough fingers left to drive. They practically never do because they know that they're in the wrong. That's the reason why states like North Carolina put out laws saying, you can't release body camera footage at all. If the police are really telling the truth, it ought to be a matter of, hey, the public may not like to see it, but this is what we got to do every day. This is what you got to put up with, and you can't deny that it's justified. But they never do. So that lets you know they understand exactly the lies that they're telling. And this case has been no different. If the police are going to the extraordinary lengths of circumventing the law and getting no-knock warrants, then common sense says that they better make sure that their entire squad, the entire incident, is videotaped. Everybody has to be body camered up. just in case there's any questions afterwards, because you're showing up in what you have said. We think that this has a high likelihood of becoming a violent incident, a violent encounter where there's going to be a hell of a lot of bullets flying and potentially people getting killed. Well, gee, that fits the very definition of forensic, now doesn't it? And that being the case, it would eliminate all question about use of force or about what happened if you make sure that the department has full video documentation of the raid. After all, this isn't some traffic stop. It's not some event where the police didn't have a chance to prepare for it. It just came out of the blue. The police planned out this murderous attack. They went to a judge beforehand and they told the judge this is where the attack's going to take place. This is who we're targeting, though any other black bystanders are also fair game. And this is the location, this is the timing of it, this is who we're after. They told the judge in withering detail, this is who we're going after, this is who we're going to be trying to kill. All the other, if there are any other unarmed black people there, well, we can get them as a bonus. With all this pre-planning, a camera, in fact, a number of cameras, is a must because they plan to storm the building, guns at the ready, without even identifying themselves. Now, that's a recipe for a shootout. Why, if the police are so upstanding, if they're so honorable, if they're so decent, if they're so truthful, if they're so honest, if they're so always right and never wrong, then it goes without saying that there's not just one body camera that captured the murder of Breonna Taylor. Hell, every cop on the scene had to have their body cameras on, right? Right? Except they didn't. So out of the dozen or more cops who took part in this murderous assault, not even one of them had a body camera. Not even one. And I don't mean this isn't just a typical case of, well, there were 10 officers on the scene and all of their cameras had a simultaneous malfunction. By the way, they've done that a number of times in New York, in Philadelphia, and other white supremacist enclaves. The police department will have an incident where a black person has been shot or a black person has been hideously assaulted, and the police will be asked, how many of your officers have body cameras? Well, we all have body cameras. Okay, well, let's see the footage. Well, none of the cameras have any footage of the incident. They all suffered a simultaneous malfunction. And you might wonder, how many times have police been indicted for tampering with body cameras? 0. So that lets you know the DAs and the state's attorneys and the federal government are all in it with them. They're all on the same page. But that's not what happened here, though. With the murder of Breonna Taylor, this wasn't a case of a simultaneous malfunction. The problem was the police didn't have body cameras. According to Stephen Conrad, the chief thug of the Louisville PD, the police chief, the department's death squad, who they call their criminal interdiction division, they don't wear body cameras. It's not a matter of the department doesn't require them to. It's a matter of we don't have these guys. These guys, they don't wear body cameras. Other guys in the department, you can choose whether or not you want to, but not them. If you're in the criminal interdiction division, if you're part of our death squad, you don't wear body cameras. Now, why would you want to have the guys who are carrying out allegedly the department's most dangerous arrests, carrying out the ones that are going to have the most potential for blowback, the most potential for public outrage, the most potential for lawsuits that will go on as far as the eye can see? Why would you have these guys in particular not required to have body cameras on them? Special forces wear body cameras. Now, if the special forces go all over the world wearing body cameras, how come you got the hicks in the Louisville PD who don't? There's an entire division of the Louisville Police Department who don't wear body cameras. And it's not because they can't afford them. It's because this squad, they are not allowed to, and it's part of the department's policy. These guys don't wear them. We do not allow them to have body cameras. You're not going to be forcing them to wear body cameras. And what a surprise. It's also the same group whose job it is to go into people's homes, guns blazing. Now, common sense would tell you that raiding people's homes is risky. And in fact, that the police make it their policy that their go-to thugs don't wear cameras, that tells you everything you need to know. You put it together and try to tell me that this was not a premeditated murder that took place. The cops go to a judge and get a warrant that specifically says that they can walk up to your home and just kick in the door and come in guns blazing and not even have to identify themselves first. This is done to give them legal cover for when they kick in the wrong door and kill the wrong people, which happens frequently. The cops go to Breonna Taylor's home, but they don't watch the home first. They don't observe to see if the man that they allege they're after is even there. They don't wait to say, hey, before we carry out this raid, let's wait and see until let's make sure he's there first. Because after all, you would think at the very least, clearly the Louisville death squad has absolutely no regard for human life, definitely no regard for black lives. So even if you take that out of the equation, don't you think at least you want to make sure that the guy who you went through all this trouble to try to perform the arrest of, don't you want to make sure that he's there first? Come on, you've watched every cop show and movie there is out there. You've watched all of these real life reality shows about the police. And one of the things they point out when it comes to performing some sort of fugitive arrest, first thing you got to do is make sure the guy is there. And there's a common sense reason for that that has nothing even to do with public safety. You want to make sure that the guy actually gets caught. Because if you raid the wrong house, you've let the guy know that you're tracking his movements, you're after him, and that you got this close to him. Well, now he's guaranteed to get away because you helped him get away because you raided the place when he wasn't there. He's going to know that you tried to pinch him, and he's going to be gone in the wind. You talk to any real law enforcement apparatus, you got to go outside the United States to find them. But you talk to any real police and not the white supremacist thugs with badges that you got in the US, and what you find is that's exactly how it works in a competent, actual police department, not some bunch of meth-smoking hillbillies in Louisville. They would want to make sure, you would think they would want to make sure that they got their man. So you watch the place and make certain. At the very least, don't you want to have some idea how many people are actually there? Starting with the guy you're allegedly there after, you would think that would be common sense. But they didn't do that. They didn't do any due diligence. They did not observe. They did not surveil the house. They didn't do any sort of stakeout. They didn't care that there were probably children there. Instead, they used a battering ram to smash the door, and they went in gun shooting. In fact, it's thought that they probably didn't even wait that long, probably started firing from outside the home. They just began indiscriminately shooting, and not just at Breonna Taylor's home, but also the neighbors' homes as well. They were just guns going all over the place. And then they try to white-splain this away afterwards. The first thing that they try to say is they had identified themselves. Why, that's not true. We identified ourselves. We told them, this is the police, open up. That's what they said, by the way. They said that they did identify themselves before they began shooting. Now, this is obviously a bald-faced lie on its face. Why the hell would you go through all the trouble of getting a no-knock warrant if you intended to announce yourselves all along? Well, our plan was we were going to announce ourselves. We had no intention of just running up to the front door and smashing it in with a battering ram. Why, we did identify ourselves. Then why the hell would you get a no-knock warrant? What do you need a no-knock warrant for? And this is a woman whose home, this woman works for the freaking city. This is not some gangbanger or some sort of hardened criminal, not like the thugs in the Louisville PD. They're hardened criminals. Breonna Taylor was a law-abiding citizen, as is Kenneth Walker. Now, you would think that if the police were about to raid the home of a fellow civic servant, at the very least, they would look and go, well, this is probably a low likelihood of needing some no-knock anything. But they're so busy trying to cover themselves, they're so busy trying to figure out how do we duck and dodge and quell the public outrage that they see growing by the day, and it's not going away. In the middle of a coronavirus pandemic, you got the black community saying, we're going to get these guys punished for this. And they're so busy trying to lie their way out of it. We knocked on, why, we announced ourselves. Really? So that's why you went and got a no-knock warrant. because your entire plan was you were going to announce yourselves all along. They can't even get their lies straight. The police disinformation statement was that they needed a no-knock warrant because, quote, these drug traffickers have a history of attempting to destroy evidence. Now, notice that they put that first. When it came to a no-knock warrant, they did not put these drug traffickers have a history of opening fire on us the moment that they see us coming, or the moment that we announce ourselves, they have a history of opening fire on us. That's not front of mind for them for justifying a no-knock warrant. They didn't start off with, we're concerned that these guys, if we announce ourselves as the police, they're going to open up on us with everything they got. We're going to be walking into a freaking hail of bullets. That's not what they said. This is the police's own words. And I've told you that when it comes to people speaking, they tend to focus first on saying what's at the front of their minds. What's most important to them is what they tend to come out with first. And the first thing that the white supremacist thugs in blue, the local death squad in Louisville, said was, these drug traffickers have a history of attempting to destroy evidence. So that's what was at the front of their minds. That was top of mind for them. Why, we don't want these niggers trying to get rid of any evidence. Okay, well, surely the secondary justification for a no-knock warrant is going to be concern about walking into a shooting gallery, right? Wrong. The secondary justification that they gave was that these drug traffickers have cameras on the location that compromise detectives once an approach to the dwelling is made. So that's their second justification. It's not getting shot. It's, well, we think that these guys could have cameras. So far, I'm waiting to hear the part about these guys could open up on us with a whole bunch of assault rifles and pistols and bombs and bazookas. Still waiting to hear that. Haven't gotten to it. Okay, well, they got a third reason listed. Surely this is the part about the guns, right, and getting shot up. Nope. Third part is these drug traffickers have a history of fleeing from law enforcement. So that's pretty much it. That was the police's justification for their no-knock warrant. They were scared that the alleged, and now we know non-existent drug dealers at Breonna Taylor's residence, the imaginary drug dealers that only existed in the death squad's white supremacist rancid imagination, they were scared that these imaginary non-existent drug dealers were going to destroy the drugs that weren't even there. They were concerned that, well, these guys could have cameras on the location. Well, didn't you check to see? Didn't you do any sort of stakeout or surveillance so you could check and see what kind of cameras you got? That's supposed to be standard operating procedure for any sort of group, so-called law enforcement or military, that calls themselves performing some sort of dynamic entry. That means raid. You're supposed to surveil the place and see, do we see any cameras present? Any security cameras? Anything? Anything that would make it where the bad guys could have eyes on us? Did they even check? Nope. If they did check, that means that they're lying. They lied in their no-knock warrant application. And finally, have a history of fleeing from law enforcement. Gee, isn't that supposed to be what you surround the target domicile for? You're supposed to that's one of the things that the police do, by the way. And you've seen it yourself. Whenever they come up to serve a warrant on somebody or to perform an arrest, what they'll do is they'll have an officer or two at the back of the house or at the back of the apartments or what have you. And the reason why is because they know that the guy, once he sees the police at the front, there's an even chance that he's going to try to go out the back. So they want to make sure that there's an officer at the back too. They don't just send one guy to perform an arrest. On TV they do, but in the real world they don't. I've seen it myself, by the way. You'll have 2 or 3 cops at the front door and a couple of cops at the back. So the 3 reasons the police gave, none of these hold any water. They all fall apart as soon as you look at them because none of these apply to the situation. And even if they did, what these guys did would not have had any bearing on this whatsoever. No, the reason that you have a no-knock warrant is you want to make sure that you get the drop on anyone who might have a gun inside. But what if you're raiding a place that has unarmed people? Well, this is going to be our get-out-of-jail-free card. Well, that and the department making sure that no officers wear body cameras when you work in the local death squad unit. That's their guarantee. No body cameras, so there's no footage. And just in case anybody's asking, what are you doing kicking indoors? Well, we got a warrant to do that. And when we occasionally kill some unarmed person, even if it's an EMT for the city, well, it's going to be the word of the cops, white cops, versus the dead black person. And we all know how that goes, don't we? If the drug dealers have cameras on the premises, then doesn't it make sense that the police should have cameras of their own? This way, should one of their murderous raids be so egregious that it simply can't be covered up, at least the drug dealers won't be the only ones with video of the incident, right? All the drug dealers' cameras are going to be pointed outside. They certainly won't have cameras pointed at their drug operation. They're not going to document their own illicit narcotics operation. So the drug dealers would have all of their alleged cameras pointing outside where the cops are. So the only actual irrefutable evidence that the amount of force or the actions taken in a raid would be justified would have to come from the police themselves, because it damn sure wouldn't come from the drug dealers, right? So if you're a trigger-happy gang of racist thugs, you don't want a situation where the only visual evidence is you and the rest of your gang approaching a home in a residential area, guns drawn. Because if you don't wear body cameras, that's the only video evidence anyone will ever see. But of course, as the enforcement arm of white supremacy, the cops make sure to confiscate all video cameras of the places they attack. That's what they did with Laquan McDonald. When they murdered Laquan McDonald in the street, they immediately began running around to all of the businesses on that street, on that avenue, and tell them, give over your video cameras. We know you had evidence of the murder. Hand them over. Hand over the video. That's what they did. And they do that routinely, by the way. They start running around to any businesses or places that look like they had got surveillance cameras and tell you got to hand over the video. We just killed some black person in the streets, and we need to make sure that there's no evidence. So, as usual, the thugs with badges are lying when they claim that they were all worried about the drug dealers having cameras. The police are actually worried that when they go hunting for a black person to murder, that there's going to be evidence that could put them away. But the white media doesn't question or impugn what are clearly obvious lies. Instead, the white media tries to enforce those lies and prop them up. And if they don't have any lies to work with, as we've seen with the case of that white Hispanic reporter who tried to smear Breonna Taylor, well, they try to make some lies up. And that's what they've been reduced to. Well, her work history, she's not applying for a job. She's dead. And Kenneth Walker, they tried the same kind of feeble attempts. Well, that Kenneth Walker guy, he was there in her home, but he's listed as his residence being elsewhere. So that's usually what happens when you have two unmarried people who happen to be in a relationship. One of them is going to live in one place and the other person is going to live somewhere else. Are these crimes? They're taking stuff that's not even crimes and trying to figure out, what was he doing there? He's in a relationship with her. That's usually how it works. Yeah, except that's the whole point. As a black man who actually defended himself and the woman he cared about, we gotta make sure people understand this guy, he's a criminal. And if we can't find any crimes, we'll just talk about his life as a crime. He got out of bed this morning. What was he doing out on the streets, out of bed? This guy, he ate cornflakes this morning. Now, why would he be eating cereal? This is the white media doing this. Smearing a woman who, by the way, no criminal record, no drug charges, no anything. A law-abiding citizen, more than we can say about her murderers. You can't sit there and say that the killers of Breonna Taylor are law-abiding citizens. We at least know that Miles Cosgrove and Brett Hankinson, we know that those two bastards have a long-standing history of brutality and lawlessness. So you see the white media working to try to justify her murder after the fact. Same way they've done with all the other victims of police killings. They can't say that there were drugs there. They can't say that she was the person the police were after. So they're trying to manufacture a false association in people's minds. They're trying to dirty them up by innuendo. You don't have any crimes to point to, so what was Kenneth Walker doing there? He's domiciled somewhere else. He's listed as having another residence. What was he doing at her place? How is that even something to talk about? What does that have to do with anything? It's certainly not a crime, not even wrong. So why even bring it up and try to paint it as, well, it's suspicious that he would be there. What was he doing there? The old white supremacist talking point, well, if the nigger didn't do this, they certainly did something else, or at the very least, they deserve it because they're black and they're seedy and there's something wrong with them. But we, of course, know what the real crime here is. The real crime is that Breonna Taylor was black and so is Kenneth Walker. That's the real crime. The white media has spent hundreds of years manufacturing the societal fiction that the killing of a black person, especially by the thugs in blue, is never a crime and is not to ever be punished. And if a black person defends themselves, that is always, especially if you defend yourself from a police attack, that's a guaranteed prison sentence. They need to have the public mind, hey, when that happens, that guy's supposed to go to prison no matter what. That's supposed to be automatic. That's how you try to condition society to become a machine to reinforce and support white supremacy. You got to brainwash and indoctrinate people with the idea that, hey, you are not to defend yourself against the police no matter what. They come and kick in your door and murder your woman. You don't do anything about that. You just better hope they don't shoot you too. But there's another reason why the murder of Breonna Taylor and the self-defense carried out by Kenneth Walker happens to be especially irritating for the white media and the thugs in blue and their hangers-on in society. It's another reason why they're frustrated by this and angry by this and why this is precedent-setting, potentially precedent-setting. You see, there's also another black man involved in this incident, somebody else who has also been heroic and courageous and who deserves all the support and praise that we can give. I'm talking about Judge Olu Stevens. Now, you've heard of Judge Stevens before. This is the man who disqualifies juries if he sees that the prosecutors are trying to racially purge the jury pool of black potential jurors. He's the guy who made headlines for that, saying, hey, I can see that you are racially profiling the jurors. You're using your peremptory challenges in order to strike all the black jurors. And that being the case, this jury is no good. You got to get one that's got some black people on there. I see what you're trying to do. And you had these idiots going, this nigger, he's trying to stop our black incarceration racket. We got to get this nigger out of here. So far, they have failed. Well, Judge Olu Stevens, he is doing his job. He is upholding the law, and he is adhering to and faithfully upholding his oath to uphold and support justice. Equal justice under the law. He is not treating the white supremacist thugs in blue as super citizens with rights beyond those of mere mortal men, and certainly rights above black people, and that black people have no rights. Why 90% of convicting a black person is accusing them of a crime. Not in Judge Stevens' court, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Judge Stevens is applying the law equally. So when Kenneth Walker was arraigned, he stood before Judge Stevens, and Olu Stevens looked at the case. He looked at Kenneth Walker's background and said, this is a man whose home was barged in by a bunch of white supremacist gun-toting thugs who murdered his woman right in front of him. And this man defended himself. He has no criminal record. This guy has no problems. There's no issue. And even if he did, it can't be worse than what the police routinely release people for. And this guy, he's not a flight risk. Put him in jail for what? He didn't do anything wrong. He broke no laws. He's certainly innocent until proven guilty. Well, what's he been accused of? Well, the cops barged into his home, guns blazing, and we say that he shot somebody in the leg. He shot one of the intruders in the leg. Well, they barged into his home, and they didn't even announce themselves. What was he supposed to do? If they had announced themselves, he wouldn't have done it. This is a law-abiding citizen. This man is defending his home and defending his woman. What the hell crime is there? So Judge Stevens said, you know what? This is obviously an honest man. He's a good person, not like the thugs in the Louisville PD. Let this man be released ROR on his own recognizance. This is clearly a law-abiding citizen who the police made the mistake of trying to murder. And we'll let this be sorted out in court. But in the meanwhile, this man, he's no flight risk. He's no danger to the public. He's never been a danger before. So why is he going to turn danger now? And the police are furious. See, they don't want any bricks taken away from that wall. Why, you got a judge who decides that he's going to apply the law equally, and then when white supremacist thugs raid a place and say, we caught this nigger calling himself, defending himself from a white supremacist attack. You better put this nigger in prison. The judge says, nope, let the guy go. He'll have his day in court. The white media is not looking and saying, hey, why would the judge do that? Instead, it's a matter of they just say, well, police unions are furious. Yeah, the same police unions who cheerlead for the murder of unarmed black people all the time. They're angry. Seems to me that is justice. The police are angry because they don't want to see this precedent being set. They don't want to see black people actually defending themselves, and they damn sure don't want to see any judges, certainly not black judges, who decide that they won't do like Tammy the Mammy. They don't want to see black judges who look and say, let's apply this as if this was any other case with any other defendant. If you heard about some guys in the neighborhood who called themselves kicking in the door of an innocent woman and her boyfriend, and the boyfriend actually takes up arms to defend him and his woman, what would you say? Well, what I would say is, why is there even a trial is the first thing I would say. And secondly, well, if there is going to be a trial, this guy doesn't belong in any sort of prison cell. He's a law-abiding citizen. And that's exactly what Kenneth Walker is. The white media wants to create a narrative of that there's good guys and bad guys here. Well, we know who the good guys are. It's Kenneth Walker. He's the good guy here. Damn sure ain't the Louisville PD. Human beings learn by repetition. And repetition is the mother of learning. That's how human beings learn. Or at the very least, this is how human beings are taught. Big difference. People have to be programmed through repetition, through seeing something over and over again, being told something over and over again. People have to be programmed not to react to injustice, because typically the natural reaction that people have is when they see something that's unfair, unjust, unequal, their natural impulse is to intervene, to restore balance. Human beings believe in balance. It is literally hardwired into us. We have two eyes. We have two ears. You can say, well, you've only got one nose. Yeah, but your nose has a left and a right nostril. Well, you got one mouth. Yeah, but your tongue has two sides. Well, you only got one brain. Yes, but your brain has a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. Well, you've only got one heart. Yes, but your one heart has two upper chambers and two lower chambers. You see where I'm going with this. The idea of balance, it is literally hardwired into our biology. So when we see imbalance, we feel compelled to bring something resembling equality and balance to it. You have to be programmed not to follow that biological imperative. Society has to be programmed to just sit on their hands and accept seeing people who they know to be murderers being allowed to walk because the racists happen to be both the DAs and the judges, and they're telling you, well, you know, this is the only system you got and you better not object to it. You better not say anything. And oh, this black man over here who protected himself from a police raid, you better say that he's guilty. And the very fact that he even defended himself, he should go to prison for the rest of his days. That's automatic. That's what the law says. The law says he should go to prison. The law says if you try to protect yourself from if the police try to murder you, you better not do anything about it. If you do, that's resisting arrest. That's assaulting an officer. That's first-degree murder. That's automatic, and the public has to support that. That's the law. That's automatic. Except those lies, those mental shackles are being removed from the public mind. People are looking and going, no, you have to prove that a crime happened here. You don't get to pull that mandatory sentencing guidelines. Why, it's just automatic. You don't get to pull that. And you better believe that both the enforcement arm and the propaganda arm of white supremacy don't want to see any changes made. The public cannot begin getting the idea that A, the police are wrong, and B, all of these laws saying that if you protect yourself from the cops trying to assault or kill you, well, that should be first degree whatever. They don't want the public thinking, oh yeah, that is automatic. Well, that's just it is. You know, you didn't get put away because of the crime. You got put away just because of the accusation. All they have to prove is that you tried to protect yourself, and that's the crime. That's what they did. They wrote it into the law. Well, the fact that all they have to do is just prove that you tried to protect yourself from a police assault, that's the crime you committed. It doesn't matter that the police came in, guns blazing, didn't announce themselves, murdered your loved one right in front of you. The fact you tried to defend yourself, that's all they got to prove. This guy tried to defend himself, and the law says he can't do that. So you got to put him away. Oh, there's no mitigating circumstances here, no extenuating circumstances here. Yeah, see, the circumstances don't matter, but that's mostly if you're black. If people start deciding that just because the white supremacist thugs with badges make an accusation against you, that doesn't mean that it's true, then people are also going to realize that the enforcement arm of white supremacy doesn't deserve any rights above or beyond everyone else, especially not when they're the ones shooting up people's homes and murdering innocent women in what is supposed to be the safest place on earth for them. Breonna Taylor should have been most safe at home. Instead, that was the least safe place for her because the white supremacist thugs with badges have legal immunity given to them by the state. And it's going to be up to the people to make sure that when a white supremacist gets himself behind a badge, that he does not get to use color of law as a license to kill. And that's the reason why the defense of Kenneth Walker is so important. This is a precedent-setting case. The white supremacists certainly seem to recognize that. You see, many people might look and go, well, this is about Breonna Taylor. Well, it is about her to an extent, but that's not the white supremacist media's interest here. As far as they're concerned, she's just another nigger dead. The problem is that black man tried to stop it. And more importantly than that, that black man, according to the police, why, a police officer got shot in the leg by this guy, and he did it in self-defense. You cannot ever have a black person who calls themselves doing anything that the police claim harmed them and then say self-defense. Why? There is no such thing. If the police try to rape you or kill you or assault you, you better not do anything. That's social programming. And we all owe a debt of gratitude to Judge Olu Stevens. If I were able to whisper in his ear, I would tell him, you should do what that racist pile of crap who presided over the Dylann Roof trial did. That racist scumbag who presided over the Dylann Roof trial, he said that the only victims were Dylann Roof's family. Why, they're victims too. If I were Olu Stevens, that's what the hell I would have said. I would have said the only victims here are Breonna Taylor and her family, as well as Kenneth Walker and his family. They're the only victims here. Breonna Taylor's family, they lost a daughter, they lost a sister, they lost a piece of their family. They're the only victims here. They're the victims here. Declare that the police are not the victims of anything other than their own racist corruption and stupidity. In fact, what I'd love to see is there be a guilty verdict. I would actually, there's a part of me, just in the abstract, I would love to see Kenneth Walker be convicted in Judge Stevens' court, and then I'd like to see Judge Stevens do what the white supremacist judges in Chicago did when Jason Van Dyke's accomplices in murder were convicted. Throw out all the charges and say, there's not going to be any conviction. This was a faulty verdict. Hey, Kenneth Walker, go and sin no more. But we convicted him. Yeah, well, as far as I'm concerned, the conviction was wrong. The jury was wrong. This guy shouldn't have been convicted. He did nothing wrong, so you're free to go. That's what all these white supremacist judges do whenever one of these thugs with badges, whenever one of these white supremacist race soldiers gets himself convicted, the judges go, oh, well, that verdict was too harsh. Or it should just be thrown out altogether. I would love to see, just in the abstract, I don't want to see it in reality because the rules are different for black people. I add this simply because I know that I have some lead paint babies in my comment section. I didn't say that I want to see Kenneth Walker convicted. I said it would be an imaginary exercise. I would love to see that happen just to see Judge Stevens say, I'm throwing out the verdict. See those white supremacists get a taste of their own medicine. And then the judge can lecture the police about use of force and no-knock warrants and how they were the ones who created this tragedy and how no-knock warrants have no place in this society. And this would never have happened if you guys had actually followed the law. Where were the surveillance at? You guys didn't do your jobs. And that's the only crime here is the ones you committed. And there should be an investigation. Lecture the bastards about it. Go ahead and let them go through all that work and trouble. We fought hard as hell to get that nigger convicted. We got him convicted. Yeah, the white supremacists win again. And then the judge says, I'm throwing out the verdict. This is a bad verdict. And you cops, you guys are a bunch of idiots and morons, and you're the ones who brought this about. And if anyone should be ashamed, if anyone should be in jail, it should be you. I would love to see that happen. That's in the abstract, though. That's an imaginary scenario. In the real world, though, no judge, not even Olu Stevens, is going to lecture the police, at least not without an innocent verdict for Kenneth Walker. Absent that, I don't see that happening at all, even though it should. This is a clear-cut case of excessive force, a clear-cut case of police corruption, a clear-cut case of murder. Breonna Taylor was murdered. The police are supposed to be watching any place that they intend to raid. They're supposed to be watching, first of all, to make sure that the person that they're there to arrest is there. Second of all, watching to make sure that they know who's in the house, make sure that whatever place they intend to raid, because you don't want to go in guns blazing and then you wind up shooting children. Every police department, including the FBI, hostage rescue team, SWAT teams, they are all very much, and I have even books on this books that are for internal use in police departments and law enforcement apparatus, where they talk about dealing with the media. And one of the main things they point to is if you're going to be performing any sort of raids and such, you do want to make sure that you understand who might be in a particular place you're going to raid, because if you wind up killing a kid, it's going to be all over the news. They got books advising them about that stuff, dealing with the media. But of course, there's very little need to worry about the propaganda arm of white supremacy actually questioning or otherwise trying to indict the thugs with badges. The white media is not there to try to criticize, undermine, or tear down the enforcement arm of white supremacy. The white media is there to justify and support them. But in this case, it's hard going. It's really tough on this one, because the white media doesn't have the ability to smear the victims. Their usual bag of tricks isn't there. They were thinking to themselves, well, if we can't smear Breonna Taylor, at the very least, we can smear Kenneth Walker. They don't have anything to work with. No drugs on the premises. The deceased and the man who defended himself, no criminal records, no drug charges, no anything. The white media doesn't have their usual bag of tricks. They don't have their usual talking points. Because CNN would be all over it. They would be saying, well, what about Breonna Taylor's mother? Was she involved in drugs? See, we're moving away from Breonna Taylor, just like they did with Freddie Gray. You can't say anything about the victims, so let's move on to their family members. Do any of them. We're going to try to do some guilt by association. You can't say that she had any connection to the drug dealer. The guy wasn't even there. The guy had a place. His place was 10 miles away. The alleged drug dealer that they were allegedly trying to catch. They can't justify this murder on any level. They can't turn it into, well, these two niggers brought this on themselves, If these niggers had followed the law, They can't do their usual narrative. Their narrative doesn't fit this. And at the same time, the black community, led by the black media, is making it where they can't walk away from it either. They can't ignore it either because they need Kenneth Walker to go down. They know that we're watching this. And they know that this is a precedent-setting case. They need for Kenneth Walker to be convicted. They need him to be convicted. They need the guy to be put away for life. They need Kenneth Walker to go down for this because this is exactly what I've told you about, a precedent-setting case. Before I go any farther, because I know that there's some people who aren't that sophisticated, when I say precedent-setting, I'm not talking in terms of legal doctrine. As I've always told you, the law is whatever the collective, the masses of the people do and are willing to accede to. If the people go along with whatever the so-called policymakers say, then that is what constitutes the law. Not because it's written on paper, but because the people are willing to abide by it and be governed by that. If the people go along with it, that's the law. But there is the law that's written on paper, and then there is the law of social doctrine, what it is that the society actually does and accepts. And in this case, to have the societal precedent set, where you have a black man who defends himself, the police do the tried and true, we're saying this guy should go away for life, and this is the blackjack that never fails. It always hits its target. But this time, with everyone watching, they see an example of a black man who defends himself against police violence, and what happens is he is acquitted in court. That is precedent setting because it sticks in the public mind. Is the first such incident, and the public understands, oh, so this is how things are and how it's supposed to be. This is potentially something that could be the harbinger of a societal shift, but we're going to have to push for it. It's not just going to happen on its own. We have to make sure that it happens. That's why I keep telling you that repetition is the mother of learning. If people keep seeing white supremacists, especially those with badges, harming black people and killing black people and getting away with it, and you can't even get charges against them, people get programmed to think that, oh, through repetition, I guess that's just the way it is and nothing we can do about it. But on the other hand, when you start seeing Amber Geigers go down, you see Michael Slager go down and Jason Van Dyke go down, and you start seeing cops getting hemmed up and arrested, and you start seeing the policymakers no longer willing to back the badge and all that nonsense. Now what they're doing is they're saying, hey, maybe at the very least, there need to be some charges on somebody. When you start seeing the society going in the opposite direction, that also teaches the society through repetition. Oh, when cops harm a black person, they're supposed to go to prison. Repetition has a very powerful effect upon the society. People learn through watching what happens, and the more that they see something happen, the more deeply ingrained it becomes into the social fabric and the societal psyche. And it's because of this fact that the white supremacists are only too aware that every victory fuels the next victory, and every defeat fuels the next defeat. They're used to the template, the usual never fail template of this. The police accuse this nigger over here of harming a police officer, and we all know that's a mandatory sentence. You might as well call the penitentiary and make reservations. They're used to that, but that's not going to happen this time, or at least it's shaping up not to happen this time. And they're like, whoa, this is a problem. This is a huge, huge problem. A black man in particular who defends himself from a thugs with badges assault, we cannot have anyone thinking that's going to become habit forming. So they're trying to make this into a plausible tragedy, but they're framing it in the context of, what do we know about her? Aren't you going to ask, what do we know about the thugs who murdered her? No, it's all about her. It's all about her. Why, this is at worst, the Louisville PD, they say that they tried to preserve human life, and the Louisville PD, they said that they didn't intend to kill her. And why they say that they knocked on the door, and they say that they announced themselves. Well, we're going to believe the Louisville PD. Yeah, they got a long-standing history of lying and corruption and violence and excessive force and killing people without. We know all that, but we think they're telling the truth this time around, or at least we're not going to question what they say. At worst, this is an unfortunate confluence of events. Yeah, sure, somebody died, but it was just so unfortunate. What a tragedy. They need to investigate this, and they need to review some of their procedures. And yeah, that's what they do. Some procedural reviews and some changes, maybe a little bit of sensitivity training, and but certainly none of them should go to prison for it. And that nigger Kenneth Walker, he had no reason whatsoever to pull a gun. He had no reason whatsoever to defend himself. Yeah, you see, they're being real equivocal and real vague when it comes to talking about what needs to be done to the Louisville PD. What needs to be done to punish them, because they were the ones who initiated this. They were the ones who caused this to happen. But the white media is not saying what ought to be done in order to punish them as to modify their behavior. No punishment for the Louisville PD. They were the ones who killed Breonna Taylor. But Kenneth Walker, on the other hand, we need to talk. What needs to be done about this nigger? This guy, the law says this is first-degree murder, and the police unions aren't happy that the judge isn't putting this guy in prison pending trial. But the public's not with them. Even the usual right-wing nuts who normally get out there and toe the line, they can't do it in this case because they don't have anything to work with. And on top of that, they understand that this is a new social environment that they happen to be in. The usual bag of tricks simply won't work. But the white media, they have become basically programmed by their own propaganda. They think that as long as they don't say that Kenneth Walker should be set free, they figure, well, the public will be predisposed and prejudiced against him because we're not going to have any op-eds saying that he should be set free. Oh, we're definitely not going to say, hey, this was a tragic confluence of events caused by the Louisville PD. And Kenneth Walker is an innocent man who the Louisville PD is trying to punish because they refuse to change their racist ways. And they're not going to say, hey, the department's no body camera rule, that's going to have to stop too. We have to review all these cases because the murder of Breonna Taylor is just the one that came to the surface, had enough outrage so that it could get through the white media filter. The white media usually decides out of sight, out of mind. If we don't cover something, then it doesn't exist. If we don't say something to the public, then the public mind never gets reached with this idea. The idea that Kenneth Walker is an innocent man won't reach the public mind if the white media doesn't say it. But they understand that there's a black media out here talking, so the white media is irrelevant. Taking not so subtle jabs at Kenneth Walker's character And to try to imply that Breonna Taylor we're trying to smear them any way we can. These guys, she deserved to die on some level, you know. No, that doesn't change anything. The white media is not going to be able to spin this one. They can work hand in hand with the Louisville PD and all the white supremacist racists that they want. That's not going to work here. Won't wash this time. The white media saw what happened with these other cases where unarmed black people were murdered by white supremacists. And what they saw is that there's this black grassroots out here talking about this, and that you've had DAs put out of office, and you've also had the political discussion regarding reparations changed by this black media. And they know that the black media is also watching this one. And the white media is worried. So they're trying to circle the wagons. They're trying to set up a narrative that says, well, you know, these black media types might be talking about it, but nobody else better talk about it. No, the police are not going to admit that they were wrong. The politicians and their black bootlicks in government, they're not going to say the police were wrong. Nobody's saying that the police were wrong. Nobody's saying that they should be punished. The white media damn sure won't say that the police were wrong. And you know who else you're not going to see saying the police were wrong? All of these black celebrities who were so hot and bothered about Ahmaud Arbery. LeBron James is MIA on this one. See, you can talk tough about a couple of meth heads who lynch a black man on the back roads of Georgia. You can go ahead and talk tough about them because they're not the enforcement arm of white supremacy. But when it comes to the police, all of a sudden, once again, LeBron's got nothing to say, just like he had nothing to say about the murder of Tamir Rice. Happened in the town where he was playing ball for, but he didn't have anything to say about that. And don't let the white media get you using indistinct, empty language like justice. What the hell does justice mean? You need to be specific. What is justice? Well, justice would be honoring Breonna Taylor's death. We should honor her life. Well, the white media damn sure ain't doing that. So don't come up to me and talk about justice. Punishment is what's called for here. That's the only talk that I want to hear. I do not want justice for Breonna Taylor. I want punishment for her killers. They should do the hardest time there is. No penny any 5 years. I told you about how 5 to 10 is white supremacy's maximum sentence. Well, black empowerment's maximum sentence is life if we cannot go for capital punishment. Her killers committed murder with malice aforethought. They planned out that they were going to go there and that they were going to open fire on the place and not announce themselves. Breonna Taylor wasn't killed. She was murdered. She didn't just die. She was murdered. And that being the case, you cannot call sensitivity training for her killers justice. Her murderers don't need sensitivity training. Her murderers do not need to simply be removed from behind a badge. Her murderers should be in a cage for the rest of their unnatural born lives. That would be a starting point for justice. But that's what it should be. The police are demanding that if you shoot a police officer, that should be first-degree murder automatic. Well, if a police officer kills an unarmed civilian, shouldn't that be first-degree murder automatic? If you want extraordinary protection under law, then you have to also accept extraordinary punishment under law. You got to balance the taken with the given, right? But that's not the kind of talk that you're going to get from the white media. They don't want anyone saying, hey, if the police are demanding that they be given all of these blue lives laws and such, then when the police do wrong, aren't they supposed to get extraordinary punishment? Because after all, the police occupy a unique place in the society and they put their lives on the line every day. But when you have corrupt police officers, aren't they doing extraordinary damage to the law and extraordinary damage to the society? Hence, they should receive extraordinary punishment under law, right? Right? Yeah, but that's not the kind of talk the white media is going to be promoting or saying. I would hope we would have learned our lesson, especially after the whole Snoop Dogg Gayle King fiasco. Look, you're not going to have any black celebs come to the rescue. These guys, they have their occasional pretend phony baloney bouts of indignation, and they just do that for you. That's just to keep up their street cred with you. It's times like this, when it comes time to actually challenge white supremacy in ways that matter, when it comes time to stand up to the primary apparatus that helps white supremacy get its way, its enforcement arm. That's when you find out who actually means what they say and who's just faking it. Olu Stevens is fighting the good fight, just like Kenneth Walker did. Racism is a team sport, but so is black empowerment. The white supremacists have murdered black government officials who have held them accountable. You've heard about it. A number of black people, particularly those involved in the law, the black people involved in the legal system, they've wound up dead in recent years under mysterious circumstances. And not surprisingly, though, the white supremacist thugs with badges, they haven't solved any of these murders. But in most cases, they lied and said, oh, these were suicides. Yeah, because in the minds of the white supremacists, if a black person defies white power, well, you just committed suicide. That's what they mean. Olu Stevens is fighting the good fight, but we cannot and will not allow him to have to fight it alone, because that's a losing battle. And whenever black people are MIA, when it's time to take on the white supremacists, we embolden the white supremacists. We give heart and encouragement to the white supremacists because as far as they're concerned, well, we caught some nigger by himself. Same thing with Ahmaud Arbery. They're looking for soft targets, some black person who they can gang up on. We always complain that there's no black people in any of these government positions or on any of these courtrooms who stand up to the white supremacists. Well, Olu Stevens does. And he has a track record of doing so. He didn't just get up yesterday and decide, I'm running for office, so I better go ahead and stand. So he didn't pull a Kamala Harris. See, Kamala Harris didn't have a damn thing to do with Matrice Richardson until it came time for her to run for the Senate. Then all of a sudden, hey, I need a black person, especially a black woman, who I can pretend to be interested in so that I can try to gin up some black female votes. And all of a sudden, she cared about Matrice Richardson after years of ignoring her death. But as soon as Kamala Harris won her Senate seat, she very quietly buried the Matrice Richardson investigation. There was nothing there. Sorry, nothing I can do. Well, Olu Stevens has not done that. He's not a one-day advocate for black people's rights. A lot of you frequently ask me, well, what can I do? And I have to wonder about the sincerity of many people who ask that question. Some of them are asking it because they're terrified that someone's going to actually require them to do something. And they're trying to set the groundwork for an excuse not to do anything. Well, that's not going to be the case here. If you ask me, what can I do? I'm giving you something that you can do today. You can help to defend an innocent man who was protecting himself and the woman he loved from a violent white supremacist attack. You can stand by and stand up for Judge Olu Stevens. That's something you can do today. That's something you can do. You keep asking, what can I do? You can do that. Stand by Kenneth Walker, an innocent man who defended himself. Stand by Judge Olu Stevens. This is a man of courage and principle who's been fighting white supremacy while a lot of other people like LeBron James have been running from the fight. Olu Stevens has been running to the fight. Do not let these black men stand by themselves. That's what the white supremacists want. Some weeks back, I told you about the need to have a black legal defense fund. This incident, this is a textbook example of exactly what I was talking about. Too many black people are in prison right now because they lawfully defended themselves from a thug in blue attack, and the only reason that they're in prison is simply because they didn't have the money to mount a legal defense. It's not a matter of getting a lawyer. The Constitution claims you're supposed to have a lawyer, but these lawyers, 90% of them are public defenders for black people. And what that means is they're not going to be looking to help you in any way. They're going to show up and they'll just go through the motions. Oh, Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. Go ahead and put this nigger in jail so I can get back to some billable hours somewhere. That's usually what happens. Even for a regular murder charge, if you just were accused of killing a person, period, then the cost of a legal defense from an attorney would be $50,000. I'm not kidding about that. $50,000 is just the cost of mounting a standard legal defense. That's just the fees that go along with a standard legal defense. It gets even worse if you start talking about a legal defense that requires expert witnesses who will try to rebuke the prosecution's circumstantial evidence. Most of the people who are convicted are not convicted because of direct evidence. They're convicted because of circumstantial evidence, things that happen to be there at the time. And this is the case with Kenneth Walker. That's what they're trying to do. This is going to be the word of the white supremacist thugs who murdered Breonna Taylor versus Kenneth Walker. That's what they're trying to set up. It's our word versus the nigger. And you got the white media saying, the white media says that she deserved to die. This nigger should have never questioned. He should have never tried to stop white power from doing what it wants. That's what they're trying to set up. It's going to be Kenneth Walker's word versus the white supremacists, because there's nobody to speak for Breonna Taylor except for Kenneth Walker. The white media needs Kenneth Walker to be convicted. They need him to go to prison. They don't give a damn about the circumstance. As far as they're concerned, the second that you called yourself defending yourself from a white supremacist attack, especially one that came from the enforcement arm of white supremacy, we're going to make sure these niggers get the message. We're going to teach you guys all a lesson. We're going to make an example out of you. That's what they're attempting to do. This is going to be a lynching in the courtroom. At least that's what they were hoping for. But Judge Olu Stevens, the honorable, truly having earned that title, he is indeed the honorable Judge Olu Stevens, unlike the rest of his cohorts who are completely and thoroughly dishonorable. But this one honorable man, this one good man in a corrupt system, he did the right thing. He allowed Kenneth Walker to be free on bail because Kenneth Walker's not a criminal. He's not a career criminal, unlike the thugs in blue who murdered Breonna Taylor. Those guys are career criminals. They've assaulted people, tried to kill citizens. They are not law-abiding anything. Kenneth Walker is. So Judge Olu Stevens, he got this case off to the right start. And the white media looked and said, whoa, Jesus, look what he just did. He let this guy go on bail. You can't do that. And now it's a matter of you got the black community responding and going, we got to make sure that this brother has the right resources at his disposal so he can mount the kind of vigorous defense that he needs so that this evil, wicked, white supremacist injustice system doesn't lynch him in the courtroom and just send him to prison because he tried to defend himself and the woman that he loved. I had posted a link to the GoFundMe for Kenneth Walker on the 15th, and on that exact same day, you had the Louisville Courier-General, who apparently is the local white supremacist mouthpiece. They've done everything that they can to smear Breonna Taylor, even in death, and to try to dirty up Kenneth Walker. And one of the things that they were fuming about and angry about was that a GoFundMe was set up for Kenneth Walker's legal fees, apparently set up by a relative 3 days after his arrest, quote, has surged in recent days. Now, I'm not sure exactly how much the B1 Brigade has to do with that, but I do know that the legal fund's been set up over a couple of months ago, and that being the case, it has gone from, on Friday, when I posted the link to it, it went from about 120,000 to, at this point, 162,000. And I like to think that at least the B1 Brigade's been passing it around and publicizing it and letting people know, hey, this is out there. See, if you got some white supremacist tool like that hairdresser, hamster-headed hairdresser out in Dallas, who clearly this woman was set up. You got these well-heeled, rich white supremacists who are trying to back Donald Trump because they want some tax credits from him. So they want to make sure that he does not go down in November because of poor economic numbers, which, by the way, is the leading cause why popular leaders or leaders who have a bunch of support get voted out of office. It happened to Winston Churchill, it happened to George H.W. Bush, happened to Jimmy Carter. The fastest way for a president to become an ex-president is to have weak economic numbers, and they're trying to help Donald Trump out on that front. So these white supremacist militias in Michigan and in Philadelphia and in Indiana and other places, they're being bankrolled by right-wing millionaires to get out there. And this woman in Texas, same thing. They look for cases like this that they can put out there. Make sure it's a female, so, hopefully she'll be more sympathetic. The white supremacists had no problem giving that woman $500,000. For what? I'm not sure. Oh, she got arrested. Yeah, she got herself arrested, breaking the law. White supremacists saying, she broke the law. We know she broke the law. We're going to help her out. They see black people doing it. All of a sudden, nobody's saying that, oh, look at this. Why? The police should understand that this shows that the public happens to be turned against them. This shows how much the police has destroyed public trust. That's what the story should be. It should be the story of how the police destroyed public trust, how the police have turned the public against them. What's wrong with the police that the public is supporting somebody who the police are trying to put away? How doesn't this shine a light on how corrupt the police are and how the public clearly is saying that something's wrong, but that's not the narrative the white media is trying to push. Instead, the narrative is, look at how the money's surged in recent days. These niggers shouldn't have that. The white media's angry about this. They're angry that black people are supporting Kenneth Walker. And yeah, the money's surged in recent days because you happen to have the black media beating the drum about it. And I'm not saying that the surge in the last few days, the last 48 hours, has been solely and only the result of what the B1 Brigade's done, but it's a matter of, you look at how things were moving before now, what's happened in the last 48 hours, you've gone from, and the white media is trying to say 127,000. When I first posted that link, it was closer to 122,000. And at this point, now you've had about $40,000 in about 48 hours. Now, what's that tell you? Am I saying that this stands testament to the power of the black media or even the power of the B1 Brigade? Not sure. But I do know that this stands testament to the power of black people on code. It stands testament to black people understanding and vigorously getting behind their rights, starting with the right of self-defense, no matter who the hell don't like it. We can't have a black man go into prison for self-defense. He shouldn't be prosecuted in the first case. The DA was wrong to bring any sort of charge in the first place. The DA should have looked and said, hey, you killed Breonna Taylor. You didn't announce yourselves. And the truth of the matter is, these weren't even the people that you were looking for. You guys were wrong. You just got to take the L on this one. They're like, oh, no, because the real crime that was committed here was self-defense. That's what Kenneth Walker did that was wrong. If Kenneth Walker had not tried to defend himself, he would be dead right now. Or at the very least, they would have charged him with, they would have said, oh, well, we arrested him because of, he was resisting arrest. We had to get him too. They couldn't have a situation of, we killed this innocent woman and there was a black man there. Well, we didn't put any charges on him. We didn't find any drugs, didn't put any charges on him. They were like, no, they would have said, you see, he tried to resist arrest. See, these niggers are a bunch of lawbreakers. That's what the narrative would have been. But that's falling apart. And Judge Olu Stevens did the right thing. He allowed Kenneth Walker to go home as he should be. And now the white media is seeing the black community mounting resources to help this man defend his liberty in court. And they see that this potentially sets the precedent. Because what they're scared of is that now whenever the white supremacists come calling with their guns or they decide to pull a pistol on a black person, that the black person is going to defend themselves. But understand something, $50,000, that's what the GoFundMe for Kenneth Walker's defense is. I can tell you right now, if you need expert witnesses, and you will need them because you're going to have the state using the unlimited resources of the taxpayers' dollars, perversely using Kenneth Walker and Breonna Taylor's own tax money to try to put Kenneth Walker in prison and to justify the murder of Breonna Taylor. Now, they won't be prosecuting her killers. Breonna Taylor's murderers won't be prosecuted, but they will try to put the man who tried to defend her and defend himself in prison. It's going to cost a hell of a lot more than $50,000 to mount this defense. You're going to need expert witnesses. You're going to be needing recreations of the crime scene, of the murder that took place. That's going to cost more than $50,000. So the cost is easily double or triple what it is that the Walker family are asking for. And that's just in the case of a regular killing. We're not even talking about if you've been accused of killing someone or shooting at or harming someone in law enforcement. If you're merely accused of harming a regular civilian and the case gets some media ink, that's the kind of resources you're going to need to bring to bear to keep yourself from serving an unjust prison sentence. On the other hand, when you're accused of harming one of the enforcement arm of white supremacy's henchmen, then the cost becomes something easily on the level of $250,000 to $500,000. And the reason why is the state's going to throw everything at that, and they're going to be doing everything that they can to stack the deck against you. And you better believe it's going to be a full court press. This ain't going to be a matter of, well, we'll put Joe, who's 2 weeks away from leaving the DA's office. He's already looking for a job at some white shoe law firm, and we'll put him on there because we just need somebody to show up in court for appearances. Nope. In a case like this, you already got the police union saying this nigger better go down. We got to teach a lesson to the niggers. So that being the case, you better believe the state's going to be doing everything that they can to put Kenneth Walker in prison. They have to. Let me tell you, what happened here was not some tragic mistake, as the white media is trying to spin it. This is standard operating procedure for the Louisville thugs in blue. They have a dedicated gang of criminals who the department specifically exempts from wearing body cameras and has them carry out unwarranted shootings, many cases unwarranted killings. Now, I had posted a link on my Twitter page to the GoFundMe meant to pay for Kenneth Walker's legal defense. And let me say right off the bat that this legal fund is not related to the civil case that the family of Breonna Taylor has mounted. This is a totally separate legal issue. You see, Breonna Taylor's family, they've chosen to retain the disservices of Benjamin Mushmouth Crump, and I simply cannot co-sign that. Even if they were saying the right things, and truth be told, I haven't really seen that from Breonna Taylor's family, but even if they were saying the right things, which is the only reason why I was able to stomach saying that there should be some level of vigorous support for Ahmaud Arbery's case. But the presence of sleaze merit made it where I looked and said, there's only so far I can go. Sorry, but there's only, I don't know. I just don't know. There's only so far I'm willing to go on that one. But in the case of Breonna Taylor's civil case, seeing Mushmouth Crump there, I'm looking and going, well, hell, you guys might as well give the killers of Breonna Taylor a pat on the back and tell them I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Kenneth Walker's family hired an attorney named Rob Eggert. And from what I've seen about him, apparently the prosecutors in Louisville, they don't like this Eggert character. They've tried all manner of tricks to try to get him removed from cases. So apparently the DA down there, they're like, oh, this Eggert guy, we don't like it whenever he defends people, apparently, because this guy is effective. Apparently he gets results. And they don't like that. And yeah, before anyone even brings it up, yeah, Rob Eggert's white. So the question is whether or not this guy can get the job done. Before I posted that GoFundMe link to the Walker Defense Fund, I first checked to see who was representing him. I just wanted to check and make sure that Sleaze Merritt or Mushmouth Crump's names weren't attached. Now, these clowns, they're like civil attorneys anyway. These scumbags, they're not defense attorneys, and truth be told, other than their law degrees, which I'm convinced they got from a Wheaties box, I'm not sure whether or not they deserve to be called lawyers. Shysters seems much more appropriate. These are two white supremacist agents. They are there simply to get the slow-witted Negroes, to get the dim-witted Negroes to look and say, yeah, there's some guys here who are saying the killing was wrong. Well, hell, that's not a defense. We all know it was wrong. The question is, who is effective at getting the white supremacist thugs in blue punished for what they do? Who's effective at that? Not Sleaze Merritt, and damn sure not Mushmouth Crump. These two have worked repeatedly to help push the lie that the white supremacist thugs who murder black people are basically decent folks, and that we should forgive and make sure not to come off as angry just because a black person was killed. We don't want to come off as angry about it. And we definitely don't want to be demanding punishment. Instead, we should stick to some lukewarm, mamby-pamby, soft shoe rhetoric about justice and black people treated differently. And it seems like it's legal to kill black people. We should just stick to some lukewarm pablum like that. Definitely don't want to come off as demanding punishment, hard punishment. You definitely don't want to do that. That'd be going too far. These tools, they work to give cover to the killers of black people. And I refuse to do anything that will put a penny in their filthy pockets. Sleaze Merritt and Mushmouth Crump, I'd see these two bastards under a highway overpass, under a freaking cardboard box, before I see myself doing anything that puts a penny in their pockets. The family of Breonna Taylor, they are worthy of our sympathy. But by engaging Mushmouth Crump, sympathy is all the support that I can give. Now, if you want to do more than that, I'm really kind of questioning what the basis for that would be. I judge people by the company they keep. At this late stage, black people by now have no excuse for hiring some punk who is clearly a tool and one who has shown that he can't win a case, can't get results simply because you saw him on white media TV. What, you saw the white media mention him? He must be good. He's on TV. Man, that's that kind of low-level thinking that black people can't afford. The Walker family has made the right move, not by hiring a white attorney, but because they hired someone other than Crump or other than Sleaze Merritt. They didn't sit there and let the white media program them as to who they should get. They went and said, you know what, we need to get somebody who we chose, not someone who the white media chose. I go for that. I can support that. So I've gone ahead and posted the link here too, because as long as I see the Walker family doing the right thing, I'm going to back their play. I would like to see them be more strident. I've only seen a little bit of talk about the white supremacy, and that's not, I would prefer to see them being more bold about it. But for the most part, because of the fact that Kenneth Walker did the right thing, at least on that basis, if for no other reason than that, I think that we should support the Kenneth Walker Defense Fund, simply because this is a black man who defended himself, and it is precedent setting. Every day there are black people who are set upon by some white supremacist who got his hands on a badge. And a lot of these black people, in fact, practically all of them, hesitate to defend themselves because of the fact that they know that they can't afford the cost of a courtroom trial. And they know that there's a white media that stacks the deck against them. So you got a lot of black people who go to prison or even get killed simply because they don't defend themselves. In many cases, they get brutalized for no reason because they're hesitant because of the fact that they don't have the resources necessary to defend themselves. This is a precedent-setting case. The fear and hesitance that goes along with defending yourself, that's going to be gone after this, or at the very least, this is going to be a huge step in the right direction. You got a judge who says this black man committed no, he didn't say it, but his actions make it clear. This black man did nothing worthy of him sitting in jail pending trial. He's not a threat to the community. He's not a threat to anyone. The police are, not him. And that being the case, we're going to treat this just like that. I have judged this man's merits as to whether or not he constitutes a flight risk. He does not. Does he constitute a threat to public safety? He does not. The police have, the Louisville PD do, but not Kenneth Walker. And that being the case, this man has every right to walk the streets because he's not guilty. He's innocent until proven guilty. He is no threat, and that being the case, on the streets is where he should be. And if you didn't have a problem with all of those white supremacist thugs with badges who were allowed to walk the streets pending trial, you shouldn't have a problem with this one. As I said previously when talking about a black legal defense fund, I told you this was going to be the work of years to get this in place, to get the kind of mindset necessary to make sure that the resources can also be backed up by a public who understands what they must do. I said before that it wouldn't be successful the first time or the third time. It might be successful the seventh or eighth time, but that it would be successful the ninth or 10th time. This is going to be something that requires persistence. Well, when it comes to the Kenneth Walker case, this is one of those cases that can set a precedent because everyone's looking at it. It will set a brand new understanding that when it comes to the police claiming we can shoot at you and you better not do it, you just better pray we don't kill you. You have a right to defend yourself. If you have broken no law, you're not supposed to just sit there and, well, the cops are going to shoot me dead and I can't do anything about it. YouTube doesn't like that kind of talk. Kenneth Walker broke absolutely no law. The Louisville PD did. Kenneth Walker does not have to justify defending himself. The thugs in blue who tried to kill him and who murdered the woman he loved, they need to justify their use of force. They need to prove that they actually did announce themselves. They have to prove what they did because they're the ones who broke the law. They're the ones who took an innocent life, not Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker being found innocent and walking out of court a free man after this high-profile case, to see the police handed an L of that magnitude. I'm not going to say that the acquittal of Kenneth Walker would be a game changer. I'm not going to go that far. But I would say that it would be a substantive first step.